Hi, thanks for being with me today. If you're a regular viewer of the show, you'll notice we have a little different format because I've got two guests today, Dr. Chris Lassiter and Dr. Sam Cole, and they're going to be sharing what they're doing, some great things, and letting the Holy Spirit shine through the world, through their business and charitable activities, and I hope you'll enjoy the show. So glad to have you all with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So tell me, what exactly are you up to?
You know, that's a great question, loaded question always. There's a lot of things that we're doing in terms of working with young people and youth and using education as our lead to bring out folks who really could do some good in the world, right? To be positioned to make change, make decisions, to be able to really impact the world as we know it in a positive way. So I lead by example. So I went as far as I could possibly go in education, and there's always learning to be done. But in the message to our young people, it's let's do what we can to make sure that we're in position to have great impact. And so you do that by going to get educated, to doing as much learning and reading as possible, and then things will come. And so for that, I've gone through my education in terms of the degrees that I hold, really helped me be positioned to do more in terms of my profession and opening a business and really being able to make change. So I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Northeastern University. I went on to law school, and I got my law degree from Massachusetts School of Law in Andover. I went on to Harvard for a couple of years during their extension school for their master's program, but I ended up getting my MBA from Nichols College in Massachusetts and my PhD in law and public policy. So I got a chance to, become a prosecutor at the age of 24. I'm a professor also at Anna Maria College in Massachusetts. And I'm a businesswoman, and I opened up Coy Consulting Group about 7 years ago, helping nonprofits stay open. So all of my doctoral research is on nonprofit sustainability through the use of funder-required performance measures. So we know we have to make sure that what we're doing is working to make an impact. And so I've created a model that helps these nonprofits measure what they're doing to show and demonstrate the impact that they're having.
Well, that sounds like a notable cause, and being involved in nonprofits, it is important to be able to show your value and what you're creating to donors and volunteers, and
Absolutely.
to excite everybody.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that sounds great. And how about you?
So again, I do work with Dr. Coy, and I lend my services and expertise in the for-profit sector to the nonprofit sustainability that Coy Consulting Group promotes. Along with that, all of my educational background is in business. So got my bachelor's in business administration from Miles College, which is a private HBCU in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I'm from. Then went on to get my MBA in finance from the Forbes School of Business, and then my doctorate is in business administration and entrepreneurship. So my job in the world is to help small businesses make it from startup to the 5-year mark. In between that is where most businesses fail. In order to cultivate healthy competition and to help spread some of the wealth around, I lend my services out to give insight to how to run business and how those that are passionate about other things in life can remain sustainable, feed themselves, feed their families, and open up the doors for income to flow in, so that we can then use our individual efforts, profits, and resources to help make the world a better place. In that time, so I spent my 18th birthday in Fort Benning, Georgia, when I enlisted in the Army. And then by 19, I was in Baghdad, Iraq, which is, post 9/11 in 2001. That gave me a global outlook, and from there I published a book back in 2017. It's called How to Change the World in 20 Minutes, and it's based in race, culture, and religion. I've done some traveling around the world, done some traveling with Dr. Coy in terms of business, studying different cultures, different religions, and understanding that they all have a foundation in love. And the book helps kind of channel that, channel the insight and the directives to break down the superficial forms of beliefs and understand that we all have the same goal. If not, we should, which is love, helping those, helping others. You know, the Bible says that the truest form of religion is to help widows and orphans. And so that's our work, the spiritual work, the work of God that we both produce. So.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some great stuff, and the world needs people. And we were just talking before the show that, you know, one of my mantras is that if you let the Holy Spirit into your life, if you really give yourself over to God, you're going to obey the second commandment, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. And you're going to be unable to not joyfully do so and make the world a better place. And you do that through your work and your charity, because without profit, there is no philanthropy.
That's correct.
Indeed. That's right.
Very true statement.
The OIC program, which is Over Learning and Confidence, it's based in educating young people. We, in our journey, on our own personal journey, have led us up to create this particular program with the understanding of what is needed to help our young people thrive and survive in the situations and scenarios that they're in. So I've spent a greater part of 20 years in nonprofit. So I've worked as, you know, a staff member in juvenile facilities. I've worked as a program director, managing my own program in the city of Boston with young people who were challenged and at risk and all of those things that they talk about, to be able to learn and understand what it was that needed to happen to help our young people progress to the next level and the next stage in their life. We all come from some level of dysfunction. We all come from some trial and tribulations. But I learned and I knew where I stand today. I was led to this point. And I knew when I was 9, I wanted to be an attorney, I wanted to be a lawyer, I had all these great aspirations, and I had all kinds of trials and tribulations that were put in my path that could have stopped me at any point in time, right? I grew up around drugs, gangs, violence, guns. I, grew up in the housing projects. My father was an undercover officer in the city of Boston. He did a lot of undercover work for about 6 years. And due to that work and the challenges that he faced, he committed suicide when I was 14.
Oh, gosh.
My mother was on drugs the greater part of my young adult life. So I had a whole lot of reasons not to be successful and not to push forward, but I know now that I was led on a path by the Creator to make sure that I was positioned to do more and to do His work and to do God's work, which led me to Dr. Lassiter and this program that we are working with youth around OIC. Is the founder, and I sit as the president of Over Learning and Confidence, where we go into the schools and we help young people who seem to not know their path to help lead them in a place where it's not the blind leading the blind, because we now see, we've been enlightened, we know the path and the journey, so we can give back and say, this is what you need to look out for. This is the traps that are set so that you don't make it. This is where things get a little convoluted. Let us give you the answers. Mm-hmm. And so, Dr. Lassiter, if you may, just kind of take it away from some of the things that, we do and we work on. Right.
So coming from Birmingham, Alabama, there's not very many opportunities that we can see. There's not a whole lot of grandeur that we can put our hands on, and there's not a lot of examples of such. And so there's an internal beacon, a navigation that if you're open to receiving, you can be led by. And of course I was led. I was a kid, sitting in the back of the class making jokes. Now I'm, holding the highest degree in education that's up for grabs, and who knew? And following the examples, the great examples that we've seen, Jesus being, one of the greatest, carpenter by trade, but the work of God is what has to be paramount. So while my education is in business and that is what we can consider my profession, this calling is higher. So we put those things aside and focus on giving the youth love and direction, because ultimately those are the future of the country we live in, and ultimately the world we live in, and ultimately whatever destiny is to come that we're not privy to. So that work, Over Learning and Confidence, is where we instill confidence, love, teach the students respect, and help them grab a hold of their discover their own dreams. So I went and got a life coaching certification. Doesn't apply to business. It was extra work that I needed to do to kind of add a skill to the gift that I've been given to assist in changing lives and turning viewpoints and vantage points. So we, we're saving communities. And sometimes we're blocked from getting in, but that just gives us more energy and fight to ensure that we work harder, raise our levels, and we're both up for an award. She's actually my competition. We've been nominated for the Global Leadership Face of the Nation for 2019. And there's a grand award ceremony with a bunch of heads of state that we'll be attending at the end of May out in California. It comes from, leading with our heart and doing that work that most people in nonprofit are led by their passion and their love, but we need them to remain open. We need them to remain viable, operational, so that we can all continue our collective efforts to spreading the love of God.
Absolutely. Now, Dr. Lassiter didn't mention, he's also a former high school teacher and middle school teacher, and also a professor as well. And for myself, as a professor, I teach, one of the classes that I'm honored to be able to teach is Issues in Diversity and Oppression, and which helps, take the blinders off and get through the smoke and mirrors about what's happening in this world and how we need to change and get rid of, racial discriminatory practices in our policies, in our government, in our schools, in our institutions, and all of the like, which is really an honor. And I think Dr. Lassiter also can kind of attest to some of the opportunities you've had to really make change and make impact from the classroom level for the folks who are actually going out and being in positions of power to teach them, the way.
Yep. So I've actually sat in on a few of Dr. Coy's classes, and the Issues in Diversity and Oppression is a great course.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I started working with one of the heads at the university that we work for, and built a program based on the book and the workshops that we do, and it's called the 2020 on Racism. So the goal is to provide education through and understand how, as a community, as a human race, where we have breakdowns based on superficial kind of analysis of preconceived notions, in a lot of cases, plain myths, stories that were made up, fears that we have because we don't talk to one another, which we know is ridiculous.
Right.
And so I was able to pull Dr. Coy in to co-teach that course with me. And this fall semester, 2019, will be the first rollout. We have 2 courses. So, we're doing our work.
We're doing our work.
Well, and that's what it's all about. And you all love what you're doing, which is so important to have.
Absolutely.
That joy in your life that you're making a difference. Now, where are you all working with the kids?
You want to jump in on that?
So from undergraduate level, we work in Paxton, Massachusetts. It's a Catholic school called Anna Maria College. In terms of the youth from middle school to high school age, we travel the country. Wherever we are requested or wherever we see a need, we go knock on the doors and ask a few questions and see what happens.
Right, and not all the time are we welcomed in some of these school districts across the nation. You would think that you have 2 very prominent, very successful African-American young people going into the low-performing schools, and you would think that there's a need to have us in front of these young people.
Well, positive role models are so important.
Right,
Absolutely.
I know where I come from, I didn't see a whole lot of me walking around and a whole lot of Dr. Lassiter's walking around. As a matter of fact, when I was in school, when I wanted to go to Harvard University, I was met with, why are you trying to aim so high? We need to be in front of these young people so that we can give them the viewpoint of we exist, and it doesn't have to be about sports that you play. Although sports is good, it's good, that you don't necessarily have to be in entertainment to be successful, that there are other ways that you can, make a difference, do God's work, and be successful and be happy, productive individuals out here in the world. And it always, it's very disappointing and discouraging to see people in positions of power, superintendents, principals, things like that, that will find ways to block having us come and speak to the kids about what it is that they can do in this world. And, the devil is busy, but we walk right around that and we'll swerve it and we'll find another way to get in because they need to see us. And this is the important work. We will not be stopped.
No.
And, when you do God's work and if you're trying to intervene and having put a stop to that, you've already lost. This is what we know. This is what we know.
Well, that's a great mission, and one of the things I'm involved with is the Greater Dallas Coalition, which we've talked about, and the great
Yes.
monthly coalition meetings that are so inspiring. But one of our other ministries that we do is having a week-long camp that's focused around using sports as a metaphor to get kids to achieve and develop patterns of hard work and integrity
Yep.
and whatnot that happens every summer. And that may be something you all are interested in getting involved in, some of the mentoring and nurturing that goes on there. We have 170 kids from all low-income neighborhoods.
We'll take them. All of them.
with 17 college football coaches coming in and really boot camping these kids and really making a real difference in their lives with a positive example. And it's especially important, the work you're doing, Dr. Lassiter, because positive male role models are so critical to this environment of the low-income community.
Indeed.
Where most of the families are single mothers.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, historically, in terms of policy in America, in the black communities, specifically, the male role models, or the males in particular, were stripped from the homes. Many of the programs, if there was a male present, the programs were unavailable in terms of
Welfare support.
welfare support. And so there was a detachment that happened. In order for people to survive, we needed to make some changes. Well, the remnants of that still exist, even though the landscape's changed. But myself, I was fortunate enough for my dad to stay in my life, and he and my mom stayed married for 25 years. But that wasn't the case for most of my friends. And so I know it makes a difference. But
all the difference.
all the
Absolutely.
difference. And the sacrifice that my father made was he worked for the vast majority of my life, maybe 25, 27 years, working double shifts, 6 days a week. And that kept me from having to go out and be put in a position where I needed to try to provide for the family and fall into the traps that a lot of people that in my position have found themselves in. And once you get in that, it's hard to get back out and get on your feet. And we would absolutely jump at the opportunity to come and be a part of that. We're both athletes.
Yep.
I don't say former athletes.
Yes,
if you keep at it,
we're
you can,
still
you
in
can
it.
maintain.
We still play.
Yeah.
So we have fun.
It's a wonderful program and so inspirational, and we have a lot of great people working to make it happen every year over here in Southeast Dallas.
That's great.
And
Fantastic.
we're really blessed to have one of our coalition directors is Karen Belknap, who has the Feeding Mission, Inspired Vision, Compassion Center that we talked about. But she also has 5 charter schools.
Wow.
Wow.
And is transforming 3,000 lives with quality education, value-based education, and doing a great job. Has them all graduating, and almost all of them going to college,
Yes.
and just phenomenal outcome. And really, in my mind, the charter school environment is the future because it's entrepreneurial and it has a very hands-on, success-related business. And I think the big independent school district model, which is bureaucratic and laden with upper-level management and so much top-down activity that strips the teachers of their capabilities.
Right. And I think you can speak
Absolutely.
to that because you've experienced some of that.
Absolutely. Part of the reason why I branched out and developed this program is because there was so much bureaucracy around educating the students. And nowadays, I'm compassionate towards teachers. I'm certified in the state of Texas to teach 6th through 12th grade in business and marketing. And, unfortunately, the unfortunate case is that most of our students are just a number. that comes with a per diem or a set amount, and a lot like the prison system. And the teachers are overwhelmed. There's what they call PD, professional development, that bury teachers in responsibility. So my first year teaching, I tell you, I would get a message at the end of the day, and either the department chair or somebody would say, hey, you didn't get the email from earlier? And I would say no. And they say, well, I sent it to you, third period. And I said, well, I was teaching. And then fourth period I was teaching, and then fifth period I was teaching, and I was giving the kids everything I had. I'm up around the room sweating and giving examples and, almost doing a two-step to make sure that they're engaged so that they can get the information that's necessary for life. I had a grand acceptance from the students and the district, and my courses, my second year, I taught 2 courses that had never been taught at school before. One was entrepreneurship, it was a national program. One started in New York, and the other was securities and investments. So I was teaching poor kids, most of those ESL, how to trade the financial markets and how to understand how economics works, which is something that we don't get in these type of communities, and especially in the demographic. The numbers blew out of the water for the second term, and my reward, they took all my classes, gave them to somebody else, and handed me the 9th grade courses, which was a disservice to the students because they took the course not because it was a good course, but because I was someone that they could identify with and someone that they can learn from. And in essence, the students got put back into a situation where they couldn't grow and benefit. So,
and if I may, continued disservice to our students where they're put in a situation where they can't necessarily grow and develop the way they need to is policy. So education policy has taken a turn for the worst. I have a PhD in law and public policy so that I could be positioned to be able to help write policy so that we can put this country in the right direction. And my opinion is there is a policy now that's been put out that are allowing teachers to be armed in the classroom. On its surface, the rationale is that they want to protect students from outside shooters or anybody on the campus who can endanger the folks that are in the classrooms and on campus. But, that doesn't happen pretty, often. And so you have a teacher who is, has a weapon. Now, the training that is involved, you have police officers who train extensively because they have to. But when you have teachers who's primarily responsible to educate is not to, walk around and use that. Now, one of the big things that you can speak to, and I know you've experienced, and I have as well, is classroom management. Mm-hmm. If you have a class that you can't control and you have a weapon on you, and you're not necessarily, we're talking about regular human beings here, right, who have feelings and things, emotions and all of those things, it looks as it's not conducive to a good learning environment, especially when you have kids who come from environments that may be violent, may have trauma, all of those things. That doesn't help.
Of course, the active shooters never go to schools in low-income areas. They attack the affluent.
Absolutely.
But, I'm personally happy that we're getting guns in the school in the hands of the teachers because shooters never go places where there's guns. They always go somewhere where everybody's unarmed. They're sitting ducks. They're cowards. They're usually somewhat insane and obsessed with doing the maximum amount of damage without risk to themselves until, in many cases, they end their own life. But they don't want somebody stopping them. In terms of the active shooter story, looks real bad if somebody intervenes and takes them down before they can do much damage. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a toss-up in that. I mean, like I say, we have a real problem in this country with a lack of mental health care and lack of mental availability and somewhat of a stigma of reaching out for help.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
I would like to challenge you on that viewpoint, if I may. It's just interesting conversation. As a teacher, it's incumbent upon the educator to focus on educating the students. We have what's called a lockdown drill, I know in Texas, so we run through this just like tornado drills in Alabama, hurricane, earthquake drills. We have what's called a lockdown drill. all the doors are automatically locked once you close them. This is throughout the day. So when we have a lockdown drill, once the alarm sounds, the door is already closed, because that's a policy. So once the door is closed and it's locked, there's no one leaving the room. We all crowd in a safe corner, and there's no way out until an actual officer who has a key comes by, they call it all clear, and then they unlock the door. Inside of the classroom, I've seen this time and time again. These kids are big. they're huge. They're football players, basketball players. Most of them are just, I don't know, something is in the food.
It really is. People have gotten big. There's no question about it.
Yes.
And when you have the vast majority of our teachers are female, the vast majority of those female teachers are white, and that cultural difference that we spoke about earlier makes for an unhealthy assessment of a situation in terms of police officers and that extensive training, in terms of the military and the extensive training and rules of engagement, and how to determine a threat versus a non-threat and how to meet force with force. That, in my opinion, is something that's a full-time job, and it takes constant practice. It's not like the teachers who do, 40 hours a year continuing education. That when there's no coming back from death, think that we'd be better served putting professionals who, as a regulatory basis, who does that inside the school versus arming the teacher, arming all of the teachers, and then,
Right, and those resources, I think, will be better served if we put that kind of money and that kind of funding into actually educating our young people.
100%. And smaller classes,
Absolutely.
That's one of the keys to the charter school success is smaller classes. So it's great to hear that you all are letting the Holy Spirit work through you and trying to make the world a different place and setting a positive role model for these kids, which is so important because, yes, many of them don't know a college graduate. The Dallas Champions Academy has gotten a bunch of kids college scholarships primarily through athletics, and many of them first in their family and really breaking that cycle of poverty and despair. So you all are doing great work, and it's been great to have you here today.
Thank you, Mr. Munson.
Thank you so much.
And it's so nice to see young African Americans really showing tremendous success and happiness. Have a great day.